Sikyong, Penpa, Tsering, thank you so much for sitting down with us today to have this conversation, and welcome to Mexico.
Oh, thank you for having me. It's a great opportunity to meet you and have this conversation with you in Mexico.
Thank you so much. I wonder, how do you define the role of the Tibetan government in exile today, and how do you plan to preserve Tibetan culture and Tibetan identity in today's world?
For those who don't know about the Tibetan cause or the Sino-Tibet conflict or the dispute, His Holiness the Dalai Lama came into exile in 1959 and he established this democratic institution. So today we are the only, or the Central Tibetan Administration is the only government in exile with a fully functional democratic polity. So we have our Justice Commission, we have a parliament and a cabinet, and the election commission and auditor generals, all these independent bodies. So two most important responsibility of the Central Tibetan Administration is to see how we can resolve the Sino-Tibet conflict. So till such a time that we are not able to resolve this with the Chinese government, we have to reach out to the international community to advocate for Tibet. And then we also have a diaspora community in India and Nepal and elsewhere in about 26 different countries around the world. So we also have welfare activities to look after the rehabilitation of the Tibetans in exile. So to do both of these jobs, we have the administration, the Central Tibetan Administration. So unlike many other exile communities, we are pretty organized, all because of His Holiness' vision and his democratic values that he introduced to the Tibetans. So in exile, whatever has been destroyed in Tibet since China's forceful occupation of Tibet in 1950, and then we were forced to sign the so-called 17-point agreement, which Chinese government trampled upon all the provisions of those agreements, and His Holiness tried to live under that agreement for 8 long years from 1951 to 59, and then Tibetan people had to rise up and revolt against the Chinese occupation, and His Holiness had to come into exile. So after coming into exile, that Tibetans have been practicing Buddhism over the last 1,300 years, and they are devout Buddhists, and that is what is more important to the Tibetans than material wealth.
And that religious freedom is central to the dispute with China.
Yes, definitely. So His Holiness managed, with the leadership of His Holiness and the heads of the 4 Buddhist traditions, major traditions, and the pre-Buddhist religion called Pon, they worked very hard to re-establish many of the monasteries and nunneries that were destroyed inside Tibet in exile in India and Nepal. So today we are talking about more than 292 monasteries and nunneries that are associated with the Department of Religion and Culture. And through these monasteries and nunneries, we still preserve our religion. And His Holiness also established compact communities. We are spread across 37 locations in India. And all these communities are compact communities where Tibetans live together. And because of these compact communities, we have our own schools where we teach Tibetan language. Then we have religious institutions, cultural institutions, arts and crafts. And that's how we managed to re-establish many of the institutions that were destroyed by the Chinese government. Of course, inside Tibet, there is a facade of rebuilding the monasteries that were destroyed during the Cultural Revolution, also because of China's occupation. But this is now just mainly for tourist attraction, where we used to have thousands of monks in a single monastery in Tibet. Now it has been reduced to 200, 250 monks and nuns in these monasteries. There is a limit on the number, there is a limit on the age that you could become a monk. If you want to become a monk, you need at least 4 guarantors to say that you will not commit any political activities in the monasteries, because the monasteries are considered as sensitive areas because they are the ones to protest against the Chinese policies that are being implemented there. But unfortunately, a communist government that does not believe in any religion also sets up curriculum for Buddhist studies. The management of the monasteries have been taken over by the security agencies, multiple security agencies. There are CCTVs everywhere. Now you have DNA testing, iris scanning, facial recognition, all kinds of artificial intelligence to monitor, control, and surveil the Tibetans inside Tibet. So there is nothing much that we can do inside Tibet, but in exile, we are trying as much as possible to preserve our identity in the form of language, in the form of religion, and because of the religion, that dictates our way of life.
Given the circumstances and the current geopolitical moment, how do you approach dialogue with China? We were talking about this doctrine of the spheres of influence that's been talked about in international forums. And the idea that now the world is divided among superpowers and their areas of regional influence. How has that changed the dynamics of the dialogue as the democratically elected leader of the Tibetan government with the government of China and the Communist Party?
It's always very difficult. It has been difficult, and it's becoming all the more difficult because of the fluidity in global politics and the dynamisms that is changing the international order. We don't have a concrete, meaningful dialogue with China right now, because there was a phase from 2002 to 2010 when there was some dialogue, because China was bidding for Olympics. They were coming out party, and that is why they don't want too many problems in the international scenario. That is why they initiated a dialogue. But once the Olympic was over, then the dialogue also stopped. Right now, we do have some kind of a back channel, which I always say is nothing consequential, because if you look at what President Xi Jinping is doing to Tibet, or the East Turkestanis, or the Mongolians, Hong Kongers, and everywhere else, to their own people, because the whole idea of President Xi Jinping at the present moment is that if there are no nationalities, because you're talking about 53, 55, 56 nationalities in China. If there are no nationalities, there won't be nationality issues. So now how do you make sure that there are no nationalities? You cannot kill all the Tibetans. You cannot kill all the East Turkestanis or Mongolians. So what they do today is to promote more assimilationist policies against all these nationalities and strike at the very root of their identity. In the case of Tibetans, we have a language that is one among the 15 oldest languages in this world with more than 1,300 years of history. And we transliterated every available Sanskrit and Buddhist, Pali Buddhist texts into Tibetan. And today, Tibetan is the only language that has all the teachings of the Buddha in both Tantrayana and Mahayana. So they are striking at our language. Then through that, the religion, which we already discussed a little bit before that, and that also destroys our culture, the peaceful Buddhist culture, which has potential to spread more peace in this world. If it's a culture that's not worth preserving, you can leave it. But we have a very old culture that promotes peace, nonviolence, compassion, which everybody is seeking. Everybody is seeking happiness, not unhappiness. So if you practice this, then you have happiness for yourself and others as well. But unfortunately, Chinese government does not care about all these things. What they care is development. For every ill or every problem in a nation or outside, they feel development, development, development is the solution. So they are very, very they think very unidimensional in terms of people's happiness, because that material development alone does not bring happiness. Happiness comes from the mind.
And those ideas of peaceful resolutions, of dialogue, of happiness seem revolutionary in this global context of conflict, of division, of toxicity in our collective dialogue.
That is why the message of His Holiness is so very important at this point of time. Because when His Holiness talks about his commitments, His Holiness always says, you or I, we are one among the 8 billion people in this world. So as one human being, our responsibility is to promote moral values. Therefore, His Holiness developed a very secular approach to education. I remember accompanying His Holiness to London at one time, and one of the politicians came to meet with him, and his first question was, "Your Holiness, we have a lot of problems with our youth today." And His Holiness said, "Everything is wrong with education." So His Holiness has been over many years working with the Emory University to develop a curriculum that is very secular in nature, because every religion talks about loving kindness, compassion, forgiveness. So it's not dependent on one particular religion. And this approach, this secular approach, is meant for these educational materials, is meant for both believers and non-believers, including the Chinese who don't believe in any religion. So His Holiness always talks about promoting human values, goodness in human beings. Whether you believe in any religion or not, if you bring out the best in yourself, you have the potential to make this world a better world to live in. And His Holiness' second commitment is interreligious harmony. Of course, religion came into being to bring peace of mind to human beings. But unfortunately, today, in the name of religion, there are a lot of conflicts. So His Holiness always says, just like there is not one single medicine for all illnesses, you have so many different religions for people with different mental dispositions and inclinations. So you practice your own religion, but you respect all other religions. And that's how you bring religious harmony. And that's also the reason why His Holiness has participated and led many interreligious harmony conferences. And that's also the reason why he has friends across religions. And that's how you promote warm-heartedness, not just material. You need material wealth also to have some kind of physical comfort, but real peace comes from the mind. So that's how His Holiness is talking about mental health and physical health. So you need a combination of mental and physical health, which are both important, but mental health is more important because that dictates your physical well-being also.
Do you believe that this spiritual diplomacy that His Holiness the Dalai Lama has displayed over decades, and the work you're doing on the political front has found a good response among what we call the international community, governments, organizations, especially now that also the idea of multinational, multilateral institutions as a source of solutions for our biggest challenges has been questioned. Do you believe that some of the answers you're seeking come through international cooperation, or throughout this time you found that the solution to this dispute will only come from within, from the Tibetan government and the Chinese government?
No, it has to come from within an individual, whether you are a president or a prime minister or whatever you are now, you are in a power of position. But the next day you are another ordinary human being. So you have to understand that. And when you have the responsibility, it's an opportunity also for you to serve humanity as a whole. People, maybe many presidents would say, I'm Catholic or I'm Buddhist or I'm, Islam, I practice Islam. But if you really go into how they function, are they really religious or not? If you are a Muslim, are you following Muhammad's teachings or not? If you are a Christian, are you following Jesus' teachings or not? If you are a Buddhist, are you following Buddhist teachings or not? That you have to ask yourself all the time. If you are a religious person, then you can't just create that as a facade. You have to practice your religion when you are in power. When you are in power, and you should have the commitment to serve your people. And with that commitment, then there should be truthfulness. Their commitment is to serve others, not to serve yourself by being a president or prime minister. So His Holiness always says, if a politician is guided by spiritual values, then that person will become a much better politician. Because from the time you wake up in the morning till you go to sleep, before you go to sleep, you make an evaluation of what you did during the day. Were you truthful to yourself and to your constituency, or to the people in general, or to all the people in the world? Then, if you think that you did something wrong today, you make sure that you don't repeat it tomorrow. So that's how you guide yourself, through principled values that's guided by spiritualism. So sometimes people have this feeling, oh, spiritualism and politics doesn't go together. It has to go together, because spiritualism is there because you have so many human problems. If there are no human problems, then it doesn't need to be spiritualism or religion for that matter. So this combination has to be understood by leaders who are in power. And when you are in power, if you use your power indiscriminately without thinking about the welfare of others, then we end up in a world like today where you have so many wars. You have power, but you misuse it, to create problems for others. If you want happiness, everybody else wants happiness. So if you want happiness, then why do you want to trouble all other people with unhappiness? That's the wrong way to do it. So if you are a real spiritual person, if you believe in a particular religion, think about what the religion teaches you and try to practice that in your practical life, whether it's political life or a normal life, doesn't matter.
You were saying you travel most of the year reaching out to Tibetan people around the world. What is their role in advocating economically, culturally, politically for Tibet?
As a Tibetan, we have our Tibetan values that's rooted in Buddhism. So what we try to do is to preserve those identities, whether it's in the form of language, or whether it's in the form of values of Buddhism, or whether it's in the form of culture that we practice, the Tibetan Buddhist culture that's based on peace, nonviolence, and all that. So to promote all these things, we have to keep the community together. That's why I have to reach out. Earlier, His Holiness traveled a lot around the world. Wherever His Holiness travels, you have thousands and thousands of people coming to. By the way, I just want to tell you this joke. Desmond Tutu, Archbishop Tutu was a very good friend of His Holiness. And when they meet, they are like small kids, two kids playing together. And one time, Desmond Tutu visited Dharamsala, and he said, I don't understand why thousands of people come to listen to this monk who can't speak good English. So you have this camaraderie, when real spiritual masters meet, then there is friendship, there is love, there is harmony. So all these, they have also written a book together. So all these, I think, are lessons that everybody can learn, including politicians and people in power, that will help make this world a better world to live in.
And besides speaking to the diaspora and Tibetans around the world, what is your expectation when you come to a country like Mexico, beyond speaking to those who are part of the community? When you are here as the political representative of the Tibetan government in exile, what do you expect and hope governments throughout Latin America, particularly here in Mexico, can do to advance your goals?
Generally, I think every human being in this world is same, and we all look for the same values, same happiness. Particularly in Mexico, I think there are a lot of family values. The Mexicans love their family. So it starts from an individual to a family, to a community, to a nation. So these are building blocks. Mexicans also love democracy. They love freedom. They love all the values that we talk about. So somebody who believes in these values also should be supporting others who don't have those freedom. And many governments have their foundation, a pillar of foundation in terms of international relations or foreign relations. One of that is the values of democratic nations. So Mexico enjoys freedom, Mexico enjoys democracy, but it's not enough only if Mexico has that. Because China is talking about global security initiative, global civilizational initiative, which means they want to export their system of governance everywhere around the world. We have seen all these good people gather together at the China parade, with Xi Jinping, Putin, the North Korean leader, Iranian leader, Belarusian leader, everybody coming together, And that speaks for where they intend to take the world to. Now, I don't think Mexico wants to be authoritarian. Mexico would not like to have a dictator as its ruler. If that is the case, then we have to make sure that other countries also don't have that. Authoritarian regimes do not become too powerful to invade your sovereignty. Even now, I believe that your sovereignty is compromised because Chinese government dictates you what to do and what not to do in the international forums, particularly in the multinational forums, because they ask you, okay, they give you support, but I still don't understand why Mexico is so concerned or so afraid of China. Of course, you have your relations with the United States, then you also have your relations with China. The last time I came, there were these frictions, and I said, okay, yeah, if you think United States is bad, that's one thing, but that is like you are in the frying pan. But if you go with China, then you are jumping into the fire cauldron, because nothing comes for free from China. Now, if I look at the economy, the economic relations between Mexico and China, you import more than 100 billion.
Yes.
And then you export only 15 to 25 billion. So you have a trade deficit of 115 to 120 billion. Whereas with the United States, you have a trade surplus. You sell more to the United States. So in which case, who needs more? Does China needs Mexico more, or Mexico needs China more? Because you are selling them less and you are buying more. And if you add up all these 115, 120 billions deficit every single year, then you're going to end up in a lot of problem.
Sikyong, Tsering, finally, when we talk about the phases of political power, we think of President Trump, President Putin, President Xi, and others. When we talk about the phases of corporate and business influence and power, we think of the multi-billionaires, of the people that have the economic power at their hands. And then when we have a conversation about spiritual power and influence, we think of men like His Holiness the Dalai Lama, Pope Leon the 14th. Where is the disconnect between these three worlds, where one advocates for peace, for dialogue, for spirituality, and then the rest seem to be advocating just for the consolidation of their power?
I think the main difference is the Pope and the Dalai Lama, I think, have very good sleep. Whereas President Xi, Putin, and all other leaders who think only about themselves always live in paranoia, always fearful of when their position would be moved or shifted or kicked out. So they always live in fear, including the billionaires and all that. I think some people on the street are much more mentally happier than the rich people, because they have to take care of so much wealth. So they are always under constant pressure.
How do you sleep?
I sleep much better because I don't think about hurting and harming other people. We always think about building networks, building community together, building a peaceful world. So that makes our mind also more peaceful. If you think about creating problem for everybody all the time, your mind is also in turmoil all the time. And so it's very difficult to have good sleep. So you will need a lot of sleeping pills. So we don't keep sleeping pills in our medical kits. I'm sure many rich people do that, and all these presidents and the prime ministers who misuse their power use sleeping pill more than anybody else. So if you want mental peace, whether it's presidents or prime ministers, then you start thinking about the welfare of others. Create a better, more peaceful, harmonious. It's not enough to talk about harmony from your mouth. You have to practice it on the ground, and that's how you lead. So if everybody follows that, then we don't have to fight with each other. You have neighbors always fighting with each other. What is the use? Even in our case, His Holiness is not asking for independence from China.
Correct.
His Holiness is advocating middle way policy. So when His Holiness says middle way, then of course there are ends to that. So one is the historical status of Tibet as an independent state, and the other is the current situation of Tibet, occupied Tibet under the repressive Chinese government. So the middle way is asking for genuine autonomy, and all the time the Chinese government keeps calling His Holiness a separatist. The Dalai Lama is a separatist. He wants Tibet to be separated from China. And His Holiness, just like a Buddhist monk, we chant this mantra, Om Mani Padme Hum, Om Mani Padme Hum, to invoke the Lord of compassion and compassion in your mind. And His Holiness kept saying autonomy, genuine autonomy all the time. So I tell the Chinese, who really wants Tibet to be separated from China? Is it the Chinese government or His Holiness the Dalai Lama? So I will end by saying, if you have good hospitals here, brain surgeons here in Mexico, we'll bring Chinese leaders one by one, do brain surgery, put common sense and send them back. That's all they need to resolve the Sino-Tibet conflict.
Sikyong Penpa Tsering, thank you so much for this time with us, and I hope you enjoy your visit and your time in Mexico as well.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Sikyong